You work hard. You give it your all. But somehow, you still feel drained, like your energy never quite catches up to your effort. Maybe it's not because you're doing too much, but because you've never really been taught how to rest, not in the way that actually restores you. The ancient Stoics didn't rest to escape. They rested to recover, like a warrior sharpening his sword before stepping back into the fight. 1. Rest is a duty, not a reward. You're a man on a mission. You work hard not just to make a living, but to build something meaningful, a life of purpose, strength, and stability. You carry responsibility, ambition, and the desire to become the kind of man others can rely on. And for that very reason, you must understand this truth: rest is not a luxury you earn after hard work. It is a non-negotiable duty that sustains your ability to stay powerful, sharp, and grounded. In modern Western culture, especially in the U.S., we're taught that being busy is a badge of honor. But here's the truth: exhaustion is not a trophy. It's a warning sign. Burnout isn't a symbol of dedication. It's a silent breakdown. And rest, when done right and at the right time, is the protective armor that keeps you from collapsing under pressure. Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, wrote, "The body needs rest to do its part, just as the mind needs stillness to think clearly." This isn't just a philosophical musing, it's a survival strategy. Your body is not a machine. It's a weapon. And like every powerful weapon, it needs to be maintained, sharpened, and restored. Look at the most successful men in history: warriors, leaders, innovators. They didn't grind 24/7. They knew exactly when to pull back in order to launch forward with more precision. They didn't rest because they were weak. They rested because they were wise. Rest, then, isn't something you give yourself if you finish the task. It's a discipline. It's strategy. It's the sign of a man who is in control, not one who's burning out for praise. A disciplined man understands, if you don't schedule your recovery, your body and mind will do it for you, often at the worst time. So today, start rewiring the way you think about rest. Build it into your daily routine. Don't wait for the crash. Prevent it. Schedule your pauses like you schedule your priorities, because they are a priority. Treat your mind and body like assets, not disposable tools. You don't need permission to rest. You don't have to deserve it. You only need to know this: you are responsible for protecting your own edge. In a world that wants to drain your energy, intentional rest is a radical act of power. Rest to recover, not to escape. Rest to return stronger, because life is not a sprint, it's a long, grueling war. And you, brother, deserve to enter each battle with a clear mind and a fully charged body. Remember this: rest is a duty, not a reward. If you're ready to live with clarity, purpose, and long-term power, start by honoring the one thing the modern world underestimates: rest with intention. 2. Don't rest by numbing your mind, rest by returning to yourself. So now you understand that rest is not a sign of weakness, it's a strategic duty. But here's the trap most men fall into: they stop working, thinking they're resting, but what they're really doing is running. Running from discomfort. Running from silence. Running from the weight of their thoughts. And they hide in the easiest place to go: screens, snacks, scrolling, stimulation. Let's get honest. How many times have you told yourself you were taking a break, only to emerge more drained, distracted, and disoriented than before? You turn on the TV. You scroll social media. You grab your phone with no real reason. You check the same 3 apps over and over like it's a ritual. You eat not because you're hungry, but because you're bored, anxious, or avoiding a task that feels too heavy to face. You call it rest. But your nervous system knows better. It isn't resting. It's numbing. And here's the danger: numbing feels like rest in the short term. It gives your brain a temporary break from the demands of the moment. But it doesn't restore you. It doesn't sharpen your focus. It doesn't bring clarity. It leaves you foggy, sluggish, disconnected from your core self. You come back to work not recharged, but resentful. Heavier. less inspired. The Stoic philosopher Seneca warned us about this exact illusion. He wrote, "People are not truly resting, they are merely temporarily paralyzed by entertainment." And the truth in that hits hard. Because today, entertainment isn't just on a stage. It's in your pocket, vibrating every few minutes, luring your attention away from the only place it can truly be anchored, within. So what does real rest look like? It looks like presence. It looks like stillness. It looks like time away from stimulation, not deeper into it. It's turning inward, not outward. It's pausing the noise, not turning up the volume. It's choosing awareness over distraction. The modern world is designed to keep you overstimulated and underrested. So if you want to live with clarity and strength, you have to actively choose the kind of rest that actually renews you, the kind that reconnects you with yourself. Start small. Turn off your phone for 10 minutes. Step outside. Breathe. Write one honest sentence in a journal. Sit in silence, not with an agenda, but just to notice what's there. Let your mind stop sprinting. Let your thoughts settle. Let yourself be, without needing to be entertained or informed every second. This kind of rest might feel uncomfortable at first. It might feel boring. But that's only because you've grown used to the noise. You've mistaken stimulation for satisfaction. But deep rest, the kind that rebuilds men from the inside out, comes from being awake in the quiet, not asleep in the noise. If you want to lead, at work, in your family, in your own damn life, you need to learn how to return to yourself. You cannot lead if you are always fleeing your own presence. This is your invitation. The next time you feel the urge to take a break, ask yourself, is this healing me or hiding me? Choose healing. Choose stillness. Choose yourself. Because the man who can sit with himself without needing distraction, he is the man no one can shake. Don't rest by numbing your mind. Rest by coming home to your mind. 3. Schedule rest before it's too late. Discipline is the new power. Stoic wisdom, when you delay rest, you're choosing collapse. Modern society worships hustle. You're told to grind harder, sleep less, outwork everyone. And yes, there's a thrill in pushing your limits. But here's the truth that nobody talks about. If you don't schedule your rest with the same intensity you schedule your grind, you're not being disciplined, you're being reckless. Because here's the thing, burnout isn't a badge of honor. It's a silent surrender. Think about it. You plan meetings. You plan workouts. You plan every second of your productivity, but rest? You leave that to chance. You tell yourself you'll stop when you're tired, but by the time you admit exhaustion, your body's already waving a white flag. The Stoics, warriors of the mind, never waited until they were broken to pause. They saw rest not as indulgence, but maintenance. Strategic, deliberate, powerful. Marcus Aurelius didn't rule an empire by collapsing at his desk. He understood the power of retreat, recalibration, and return. Rest wasn't his reward. It was his ritual. Your new code, rest like a warrior. Start small. Build it into your day like armor before battle. 5 minutes of silence before you open your inbox. 10 minutes of walking, no phone, just breath. A recurring calendar block that simply says, sharpen the sword. These are not pauses. These are power moves. Because rest, when chosen with purpose, becomes a tool, not a trap. And here's the kicker. When you train yourself to rest on schedule, you build the one thing most men today are starving for, inner control. Set the alarm, mark the calendar, guard your rest like it's sacred. Because it is. Rest isn't laziness. It's leadership. Rest isn't quitting. It's calculating. Rest isn't weak. It's war ready. So here's your new rule. Don't rest when you're broken. Rest so you don't break. Don't crash. Land. And when the world burns out around you, you'll be the one still standing. Disciplined. Focused. Ready. 4. Rest by going inward, not by running away. You've started to schedule rest. You're no longer waiting to burn out before you step back. You're learning to build recovery into your rhythm, not as an act of desperation, but as an act of precision. But now comes a more subtle, and far more important, challenge. Where do you go when you rest? Because rest is not just about stopping. It's about where your mind goes in the pause. And the harsh truth is, most men, even when they pause, are still trying to escape. They run away into food, distractions, noise. Or they physically remove themselves from their environment, taking drives, going for drinks, browsing endlessly, anything to pull their attention away from what's really going on inside. And while it may feel like freedom in the moment, it's actually another form of avoidance. But real rest? Real restoration? That doesn't happen when you run. It happens when you return to yourself, to your thoughts, to your breath, to the weight you've been carrying without even realizing it. This isn't about meditation apps or complicated spiritual practices. It's about learning to face the silence, to sit in it without needing to run. Because silence isn't empty. Silence is clarifying. And only in silence can you hear the signals that constant noise drowns out, your body telling you it's tight in the shoulders, your mind telling you it's anxious, your gut reminding you there's a decision you've been avoiding for weeks. Epictetus, the Stoic slave turned philosopher, put it simply and powerfully. Peace is not found in changing your circumstances, but in changing your attitude within those circumstances. What you need, then, is not a change of scenery, but a change of posture. A shift in how you enter your rest. Stop looking to escape from your life. Start looking into it. 5 minutes with your eyes closed and your spine upright, that's not nothing. That's presence. 3 deep, conscious breaths before you get out of your car, that's not wasted time. That's self-leadership. It's not flashy. It's not loud. But that's the point. The deepest forms of strength, the kind that lasts, are built in quiet places. And if you want to become the man who doesn't panic in crisis, who doesn't crumble when the pressure mounts, who doesn't need the world to slow down in order to stay grounded, then you need to learn to find stillness without changing locations. Because wherever you go, there you are. If your mind is chaotic, no change of setting will save you. But if your mind is steady, no storm can shake you. So don't just carve out time for rest, decide how you'll enter that space. Don't reach for your phone. Don't reach for escape. Reach inward. Close your eyes. Breathe. Write. Reflect. Ask yourself what's really going on. Ask what you need to release. Ask what matters now. This kind of rest is not about comfort. It's about alignment. It's about calibration. It's about connecting with the part of you that doesn't waver, even when the world does. So the next time you feel the urge to run from the noise, don't go outward. Don't chase distraction. Go inward. Return to center. Face yourself fully. Because the man who can rest without escape is the man who leads without fear. And the world needs more of those men. The people you love need that man. You need that man. Rest by returning to who you are, not by forgetting. Because strength isn't found in the running. It's found in the stillness you stop avoiding. 5. Rest through repetition. Let simplicity heal the mind. Once you've learned to stop running, to rest not by escaping, but by returning inward, you begin to see rest in a different light. It's no longer something passive. It's not a blank space on your calendar. It becomes an active form of mental recovery. And here's something most men overlook. Some of the most powerful rest doesn't happen in stillness, it happens in motion. In simple, repetitive action. Modern life is chaotic. Your mind is constantly bombarded with inputs, emails, deadlines, phone calls, push notifications, endless decisions. Even your so-called downtime is filled with digital stimulation, playlists, podcasts, social media feeds, noise. You may not realize it, but your mind is constantly on the defensive. Even in your sleep, your brain is often still processing the overload. And that's why even when you rest, you often don't feel rested. But there's a way to reclaim your clarity. It's not complicated. In fact, it's remarkably simple. The Stoics understood the value of simplicity and routine. They weren't chasing constant novelty. They weren't addicted to stimulation. They lived by the principle that clarity emerges in repetition, that the mind, like a wound, often needs quiet repetition to heal. This is where physical, repetitive tasks come in. Laundering clothes, sweeping the floor, washing the dishes by hand, walking without a destination, wiping down your workspace, arranging books, brewing a cup of tea slowly, deliberately. These aren't chores. They're rituals. They're opportunities to disengage from the analytical part of the brain, to let your mind soften, detach, and begin to recover. When your hands are occupied but your mind isn't forced to solve problems, a door opens. You begin to breathe differently. Your inner voice gets clearer. Your nervous system downshifts. Your scattered thoughts settle into a rhythm. You're not doing nothing. You're giving your mind the conditions it needs to restore itself. That's real rest. That's active healing. You don't need a spa day or a beach vacation to recover. You need a 10-minute task that lets your brain unclench. But here's the challenge. We've been conditioned to believe that every moment must be optimized for maximum output. We think that if we're not achieving, fixing, moving towards something measurable, we're wasting time. That belief is poison. Repetitive, low-effort tasks aren't wasted time. They're how your system resets. They're the bridge between chaos and clarity. And the men who understand this, they begin to crave these small moments. Not because they're glamorous, but because they work. The next time your mind feels overloaded, don't force yourself to think harder. Don't shove in more productivity hacks or power-through techniques. Instead, step into something repetitive, something simple, something that doesn't ask anything of your mind except presence. Turn off the music. Leave the phone in another room. Wipe the counter slowly. Fold your laundry with intention. Walk without a podcast. Rinse a dish with your full attention. Watch how the tension starts to dissolve. You are not meant to live in a constant state of mental pressure. You are not a machine. And ironically, the most efficient version of you, the sharpest, clearest, strongest version, is the one who knows when to stop thinking and just move. So rest in repetition. Let simplicity be your recovery. Let movement be your medicine. And in that space between action and thought, you'll rediscover the calm strength that's been buried beneath the noise. This is how men who lead themselves think clearly under pressure. Not by force, but by rhythm. Not by escape, but by presence. Not by doing more, but by doing less, deliberately. 6. Discipline doesn't stop when you rest, it deepens. By now, you understand that rest isn't passive. It's not collapse. It's not scrolling a screen until your eyes burn or lying still while your mind runs wild. You've begun to see that real recovery happens in deliberate pauses, in quiet rituals, in the simple repetition of action that gives your mind space to reset. But here comes a subtle and powerful truth that most men overlook, and it's this. Discipline doesn't disappear when you rest. It transforms. We live in a culture that defines discipline by intensity. The early risers, the high performers, the men who chase the edge and push their limits, those are the ones we praise. And yes, discipline shows up in the grind. But the deeper form of discipline? It's in how you step away from the grind. That's where the real test is. Not in how long you can go without stopping, but in how you choose to stop. Because here's what happens for most men. They push themselves all week, staying sharp, focused, regimented, and then when rest time finally comes, they collapse into chaos. They binge. They scroll for hours. They drink too much. They eat without thought. They abandon the very structure that gave them their edge. And then they wonder why they don't feel restored on Monday. Why they feel bloated, restless, foggy. Why their energy crashes after just a few hours of being back in the flow. The reason is simple: their rest lacked discipline. And without discipline, rest becomes indulgence. And indulgence slowly becomes erosion. But here's the shift: when you integrate discipline into your rest, everything changes. Instead of staying up too late on a screen, you shut down at a set time. Instead of whatever's easy for dinner, you choose something nourishing. Instead of letting your mind scatter, you create space to reflect. You respect the container of your rest like you respect the container of your work. The Stoics understood this long before modern science confirmed it. They believed that character is formed not just in action, but in inaction, in how you use the in-between. The warrior who cannot hold his posture when the battle stops is not truly grounded. The leader who craves stimulation every time he still has not yet mastered himself. So what does disciplined rest look like? It looks like setting a time for rest and honoring it. Not when I feel like it, but by design. It looks like protecting your boundaries even in recovery, choosing foods, conversations, and environments that reinforce your clarity, not cloud it. It looks like taking a nap instead of watching 4 episodes of a show you won't remember next week. It looks like choosing a walk with your thoughts over another hour in the algorithm. And it's not rigid. It's not robotic. It's rooted. It's rooted in the understanding that the goal is not to let go of control, but to rest with awareness. Because when you rest with discipline, something beautiful happens. You don't have to get back on track when Monday comes. You're already on track. You didn't fall off. You didn't unravel. You simply shifted gears, and now you shift back, with ease. This is what sustainable success feels like. It's not about grinding harder. It's about recovering smarter. It's about being the kind of man who can be calm without being careless. Still without being stagnant. Rested without being reckless. So don't drop your discipline when it's time to rest. Deepen it. Refine it. Let it follow you into your pauses like a quiet strength, the kind that doesn't need noise to prove itself. That's where true mastery begins. Not just in how you act under pressure, but in how you behave when no one is watching, when the demands fade, when the space is yours. And if you can learn to rest with intention, with rhythm, with self-respect, you'll wake not just recharged, but realigned. Not just ready to perform, but ready to lead yourself, your mission, and the people who count on you. 7. Know when to rest, and stop at the right time. As you've begun to apply discipline to your rest, a powerful shift has likely occurred. You're no longer crashing into downtime. You're stepping into it. You're no longer using rest as a form of indulgence, but as a strategy, a return to center. You've discovered that stillness has power, that repetition has healing, and that simplicity can sharpen you. But here's where the next evolution begins. The strength of your rest is not just in how you begin it, but in how you end it. In other words, you must know when to stop resting. Most men never think about this. They assume rest will naturally come to a close, that energy will return on its own, that motivation will kick back in, that the right moment will appear. But that moment rarely arrives unless you command it. Because here's the truth, without a boundary, rest becomes escape. You've probably felt it. The 15-minute break that turns into a 45-minute scroll. The 20-minute nap that becomes a groggy, 3-hour fog. The I'll just watch one episode that becomes the entire season. In those moments, you're no longer resting. You're drifting. And the longer you drift, the harder it becomes to return. The mind grows dull. The will weakens. Your sense of time, purpose, and self-discipline dissolves. This is not recovery. This is erosion disguised as leisure. The Stoics, whose lives demanded clarity, control, and presence, warned against this very drift. Their answer? Simple: know your limits. Set your timing. Respect your own cutoffs. Epictetus taught that self-control begins with knowing when to stop. Not when someone tells you to. not when you feel bored, but when you've recovered enough to return with strength and intention. It's a paradox. We think freedom lies in unlimited rest. But real freedom? It's in knowing your edges. It's in choosing when to close the book, shut down the app, rise from the chair, and re-engage with your purpose. Because rest is meant to serve your mission, not replace it. So here's what it looks like in practice. Set a timer before you rest. Not as a rigid prison, but as a commitment to yourself. Decide before you start how long the pause will be, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, 90. But name it. Define it. When the moment comes to return, don't renegotiate with yourself. Follow through. If you journal during your rest, let the last line be a signal, I return now, clear and ready. If you walk, let your final steps be an arrival, back into momentum, back into ownership. When you live this way, your rest stops being a vague stretch of downtime. It becomes a precision tool, a sharpening stone. You begin to carry a kind of confidence few men have, not because you're always pushing, but because you're always choosing. That's the difference between drifting through life and directing it. So the next time you step away, whether for 5 minutes or 5 hours, ask yourself 2 questions. When will I stop? How will I return? Set your own answer. Own your own rhythm. And rise when it's time, not because you feel guilty, but because you're ready. You made a clear decision to pause. Now make a clear decision to move forward. That's real power. Because the man who knows when to rest and when to return, he is the man who cannot be derailed. He doesn't wait for life to pull him back into the game. He chooses his moment. He sets the terms. And when he moves with clarity, calm, and command. So rest, but draw the line. Honor the pause, but respect the return. Because momentum without recovery burns out. And recovery without return? That's stagnation in disguise. Choose to return. Choose your timing. That's what separates a wandering man from a leader. 8. Rest to return stronger, not to avoid what awaits. You've begun to see that the true art of rest lies not just in how you enter it, but in how you exit. You've learned the power of setting boundaries, not as restriction, but as clarity. You know now that rest is not an escape from discipline, but an extension of it. You time it. You protect it. You don't let it bleed into distraction. But now, here's the next test, the one that defines the purpose behind every moment of recovery. You must rest to return stronger, not to hide. Because let's be brutally honest, for many men, rest isn't just a pause. It's a form of avoidance. A quiet retreat disguised as self-care. A break that secretly masks the fear of re-engagement. You tell yourself you're unwinding. But deep down, part of you is hoping the world doesn't pull you back in. You say you're resetting. But in truth, you're stalling, unsure if you're ready to face what comes next. We've all been there. It's the subtle temptation to linger in the in-between. The emails that go unanswered. The workout that gets skipped. The hard conversation that remains unsaid. It's the moment when rest shifts from restoration to retreat, and you justify it with 1,000 small lies. I just need 5 more minutes. I'm not quite ready. I'll get to it tomorrow. But that tomorrow becomes next week. That delay becomes a habit. And over time, your rest becomes your prison. The Stoics had no tolerance for this kind of passivity. To them, every action, even rest, was tied to purpose. And that purpose was never escape. It was always preparation. Seneca wrote, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality." That quote cuts deep because it reminds us that what holds us back isn't the thing itself, it's the anticipation of it. And avoidance only makes that fear grow louder. That's why how you frame your rest matters. When you take a break, what are you telling yourself? That you're withdrawing, or that you're preparing? That you're escaping, or that you're rearming? Because here's what real rest should feel like. You rise from it clearer. You step out with conviction. You know why you paused and why you're moving again. You don't return to work bitter, sluggish, or reluctant. You return ready because you've used your rest to recalibrate, not to hide. So how do you build that kind of return? Before you rest, define your why. Not just I need a break, but I'm recovering so I can lead that meeting with power, or I'm pausing so I can show up for my family fully. During your rest, stay connected to the bigger picture. Keep the vision alive, not with pressure, but with purpose. When you rise, rise with a trigger, a phrase, a movement, a small ritual that says, I'm back. It could be as simple as standing tall and saying, let's go. It could be a deep breath with full awareness of your next move. It could be closing your journal and looking directly at the task ahead. Whatever it is, make the transition conscious. Because the man who knows why he rests never fears returning. He doesn't resent the mission. He doesn't shrink from the challenge. He steps back in, sharper, calmer, more grounded. Rest, then, becomes part of the battle plan. Not a retreat. Not a delay. But a weapon. And the more intentional it becomes, the more potent your return. So ask yourself, what are you really doing when you rest? Are you preparing to re-enter with clarity, or quietly avoiding what needs to be faced? Be ruthless in your answer. Be honest in your reflection. Because only one of those paths leads forward. Rest and return stronger. That's the code. That's the edge. That's how warriors are made. Not just in how they fight, but in how they rise after the pause, with zero hesitation and total conviction. 9. Your body needs rest, but so does your mind. You've come this far. You've learned to set boundaries on your rest. You've committed to ending your pause with purpose. You no longer use downtime as a hiding place, but as a launch pad to return to your mission sharper, clearer, more grounded. But now we enter deeper terrain. Because even the man who learns to rest wisely can fall into a trap that's more silent, more dangerous, and often goes completely unnoticed. It's the trap of only resting the body while letting the mind continue to run on overdrive. You might shut your laptop. You might step away from the desk. You might sit on the couch, walk the block, close your eyes for 10 minutes. But inside, your thoughts are racing. Your brain is still solving, calculating, playing out scenarios, holding on to decisions, revisiting conversations. You're resting, but you're not at peace. You've stopped doing, but you haven't stopped thinking. And here's the uncomfortable truth: if your body pauses but your mind doesn't, you're not really resting. You're simply being still while staying stuck. We live in a culture that glorifies physical exhaustion but completely ignores mental saturation. We measure fatigue by what we've done, but not by what we've held, processed, or absorbed. Yet day after day, your brain is hit with an unrelenting flood of inputs, emails, messages, decisions, conversations, news, noise, expectations. It never gets a moment to breathe. And when it does, we often fill that space with more input, music, podcasts, scrolling. We don't just need less movement. We need less mental load. The Stoics understood this. They spoke of the mind like a field, one that must be given time to lie fallow, to rest, to regenerate. Because a field that is constantly sown with seed but never allowed to rest will not produce. It will dry up. It will harden. It will turn to dust. So what does mental rest look like? It looks like silence, not the absence of sound, but the absence of new input. It looks like time without consumption, not even positive consumption. Not more learning. Not more data. Just stillness. It looks like letting your thoughts pass without grabbing onto them. Letting emotions rise without trying to label them. Letting your mind wander without directing it anywhere. And this takes practice. Because when you first attempt it, you might feel fidgety. Your brain, addicted to stimulation, will crave something to do. Something to figure out. You'll feel the urge to pick up your phone, check your email, read just one more thing. Don't. This is your opportunity to train stillness. To build the mental discipline to let your thoughts settle rather than chase them. Start small. Try 5 minutes a day, eyes closed, no music, no agenda. Just breathe. Notice how your brain tries to fill the silence. Then, slowly, begin to allow that space to exist without interference. It's not about stopping your thoughts. It's about no longer fueling them. Because the truth is this, your mind is not built to operate at full tilt all day. You weren't designed to be in a perpetual state of intake. Without intentional rest, your brain becomes less precise, more reactive, more prone to fear, comparison, distraction, and fatigue. And a fatigued mind? That's how you lose your edge. That's how you start to slip, not visibly, but silently. Through slower thinking, weaker decisions, diminished creativity, impaired clarity. But the man who knows how to quiet his mind, even for short moments, is the man who makes decisions with calm, speaks with clarity, leads with consistency. He doesn't just perform well. He thinks well. And thinking well is the foundation of every action that follows. So the next time you rest, ask yourself, am I also giving my mind space to breathe? Or am I simply giving my body a break while my thoughts keep sprinting? Give your mind the gift of space. Not because it's broken, but because it is your most powerful tool, and you sharpen it not by more noise, but by less. You've rested the body. Now rest the mind. And from that stillness, watch your strength multiply. 10. Recovery is responsibility, not a luxury. By now, you've learned to rest the mind as well as the body. You've stepped away from the noise, turned down the input, and let yourself return to a state of internal stillness, not just for the sake of peace, but for the sake of power. You've come to understand that deep rest isn't indulgent, isn't passive, and definitely isn't soft. It's strategic. It's a choice. It's a skill that separates those who survive from those who sustain. And now, you must integrate the final lesson, perhaps the most overlooked of all. Recovery is not a luxury. It is a responsibility. This is the mindset shift that changes everything. Because in the culture many of us were raised in, especially in the Western world, recovery has been cast as something optional. Something you get to do once you've earned it. A vacation after the project. A weekend off after the grind. A nap after collapse. Rest becomes a reward only when you've proven you're worthy of it. But here's the truth no one told you growing up. Recovery is not something you earn. It's something you owe. You owe it to your mission. You owe it to the people who count on you. And most of all, you owe it to yourself, to the future version of you who is depending on the decisions you make right now. Because without proper recovery, your edge dulls. Your patience thins. Your purpose blurs. You start to feel distant from yourself, like you're operating on autopilot, performing, producing, pushing, until something breaks. And make no mistake, something always breaks. Sometimes it's your health. Sometimes it's your clarity. Sometimes it's your relationships. But the cost is always higher than the effort it would have taken to pause on purpose. The Stoics would have called this foolishness, not in a moral sense, but in a tactical one. They understood that the warrior who never sharpens his blade becomes a threat to no one but himself. The leader who never steps back eventually loses his ability to see clearly. Rest was not separate from action, it was preparation for it. And that's what recovery truly is, preparation for what's next. So why don't more men treat it that way? Because we confuse exhaustion with effort. We idolize burnout like it's bravery. We think suffering is a sign of commitment, when in reality, it's often just poor planning dressed up as hustle. But your body wasn't built to run forever. Your mind wasn't designed to be under pressure 24/7. Your spirit wasn't meant to carry weight without ever setting it down. So if you're serious about living fully, about showing up sharp, grounded, and deeply reliable, you have to start viewing recovery as part of your job. Not a break from it. And that means building it into your system. It means protecting your sleep like your life depends on it, because it does. It means stepping away from work even when momentum is high, because if you don't, your performance will crash later. It means eating with intention, moving with purpose, breathing with awareness. It means saying no to things that chip away at your energy, no matter how urgent they feel in the moment. This isn't about laziness. It's about longevity. You weren't put here to burn bright and die fast. You were built to endure, to lead, to carry weight, and to recover well so you can carry it again. Recovery is the reload. It's the recalibration. It's the moment between battles when you sharpen the sword, reset the frame, and return to the fight smarter than before. And the man who embraces this, who stops waiting for someone to give him permission to rest and instead takes ownership of his recovery, that man becomes untouchable. Because while others burn out, he builds endurance. While others collapse, he regroups. While others fade, he sharpens. So let this be your standard. You don't just recover when it's convenient. You recover because it's necessary. Not later. Not someday. Not when you've earned it. Now. Because responsibility demands it. Now. Because leadership requires it. Now. Because your future depends on it. Recovery is not a luxury. It is your responsibility. Own it like you own your mission, fully, fiercely, without apology. And when you do, you won't just last. You'll lead the ones who do. You've just seen what most men never learn, that rest is not weakness, not escape, not indulgence. It's discipline. It's strategy. It's part of the mission. When you rest with intention, you don't lose momentum, you build it. You come back clearer, sharper, stronger. So from now on, don't rest to run. Rest to rise. Respect the pause. Return with power. And remember, the strongest men aren't the ones who never stop, they're the ones who know exactly when to.